and welcome to the Parenting Show. I'm Jennifer Anderson. With me, as always, parenting expert and my co-host, Alyson Schafer. Hi, Alyson.
Hey, Jen. How are you holding up over there?
Every hour's different. Is that the common thread amongst all of us? Every given hour is a different mood or emotion?
I heard someone say they don't even really know what day it is anymore. It's just there was yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Like they don't know what day of the week it is, don't know what day of the month it is. It's all just becoming a blur.
I know. Well, I do know what day it is. It is Monday, April 20th. And the reason I know that is because we want to make sure everybody knows the date. We are doing these special editions of the Parenting Show on COVID-19 and talking to families about dealing with the pandemic while you are at home. And so it's important to know the date because I know some of the information that we relay is maybe dated, that, we see on the news with press conferences every day that things are changing and situations are changing and evolving. So we want to make sure that everybody is familiar with what we're talking about. But overall, what we're going to talk about over the next half hour is general information to help you get through the day to day.
Yeah. And for sure, to your point, everyone should be making sure that they have their up-to-date directives on how we're supposed to be handling our social isolation. And again, either phoning telehealth if you've got health issues. We're not the experts on that domain, but we know that we've got families in lockdown trying to survive the relationship aspect of family life, which turns out to be probably one of the biggest social experiments that has ever happened. Human beings were not really meant to live this way. And it's not like we're just doing it here in Canada. All around the world, we're living in this artificial formula of being a species who are supposed to be connected and living in bigger communities. And now, even though we are creating social distance from each other, we're trying to save our sanity by keeping the emotional connection in a way that's healthy and positive, and not be so close and in such close contact that we drive each other nuts. And so keeping social cohesion is probably the number one imperative right now. And that's where I hope our show can help people out.
Right. Well, I was saying to my husband the other day, and we rarely leave the house. So when I did, I happened to see at the corner a friend of mine, and I was overly excited to see her. It was like Forrest Gump on the ship. Right? I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then I thought, this is the sign of the times. I just don't get out enough, and when I do, to see somebody else that I'm not living with, it's very exciting.
And I think, too, it's important to, just in terms of handing out some tips, that people generally that have a positive expectancy, positive outlook, we tend to be self-fulfilling prophecies. So if you are anticipating that things are going to be okay, and if you're anticipating that you're going to have a good day, and if you're anticipating that your family's going to make it through, it's likely that you will then behave in a way that moves you towards those almost pre-conscious goals. So it really does pay to stay positive. And a lot of people are focusing on the positives and sharing really heartwarming stories with me. I was just on another podcast, and the guy said, I don't think we've had dinner together as a family in like years. And he said, and here we've been having family dinner together for like weeks on end. And he said, it's like, I didn't even know what I was missing. I didn't realize how much I love it. So a lot of people are talking about when we start to lift some of these restrictions, there's part of the new normal that people are not going to want to give up, because there has been some real surprising benefits to slowing down our family life, to not have to be watching the clock and rushing our kids out the door to their 227 different commitments. And the pace of life has actually opened their eyes to a new reality, which was we were doing too much and we didn't see enough of each other. And we've got some new traditions that we're not going to let go of. So I do think there are some positives that have come out of this for families.
Well, and I think too, as much as, nobody knows what the future holds in terms of times and returning back to whatever that normal was, there's still this perception that it is going to be slower. For example, my son who's in baseball, season hasn't been canceled yet, but the diamonds aren't even available within the municipality until July. So that's the end of the season, really. So
I think that
Yeah, go ahead. I think that, people are just going to slowly go back into that old routine.
Yeah, because the situation is constantly changing. For those people who like to plan, I am sure they're going absolutely nutsy. Same thing. I was holding on to plane travels. I was supposed to speak in Europe this summer, and I was planning a trip around that speaking engagement. And you're sort of wondering, like, when do you cancel the flights, and when am I going to get penalized, and are they going to push it back or reschedule it? And so for people, that planning and certainty is a very high a piece of how they normally operate. That's their personality, their modus operandi. This is really challenging them to exercise that muscle of living with ambiguity. And so again, I think this is actually a good muscle to exercise. I'm sure we've been talking a lot about self-care as that one of the great ways to help us is to practice some mindfulness meditation, which is about not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future, but just living in that 1 minute, that one moment, and experiencing it as something that is that doesn't need to be changed. To sit with the unknown, to not know about the future, and to be able to hold on to all those emotions in a way that doesn't overwhelm us, that we realize they're just emotions, that it's like learning to have a tolerance, a capacity to feel all the feelings that we have. And so life is uncertain. Here we're worried about COVID, but of course, someone could get in a car accident on the way home. There's other things that we don't know about. Someone could win the lottery tomorrow, and life could completely change. We really don't know. Life is about uncertainty. So, to be able to live with the ambiguity of it, and to hold, I think, that optimism that I think we're going to see a spike in people returning to their faith communities, albeit online.
Right.
Yeah.
So. It's a very stressful, could be a very stressful time for parents who are dealing with not only their own anxieties, their own self-care, but having to make sure that everybody in the family is okay as well. And, that includes having more than one child and having more than one personality. So now you're dealing with multiple kids who deal with the stress and self-care in different ways.
But we have to remember too that kids they for sure look to us as the adults in their lives. We are the biggest influencer on whether we project that things are fine, or whether we're all nervous and antsy, and we're more likely to say, well, if mom's not okay or dad's not okay, then
right,
how would I be? But we also have to remember that as adults, part of the maturation is also in that we have more capabilities. We have more decision making. We have more power. We have more sense of being able to control outcomes in our life. And whereas kids are more likely to feel a little bit like life happens to them, that they don't have a lot of say, that they don't have a lot of voice. So they just sort of sit idly and kind of like get pulled around by other people's decision making. And so that's why one of the big Adlerian principles that we talk about in the show and in helping people here is that it's really quite important that as early as possible, that we help give our kids a sense of being able to be independent, to be capable, to learn to make choices and have self-direction in their life. And that can just be small things. When you're 3 and 4, that could just be simply having a voice in what you'd like for snack time. And as a preschooler, learning how to put on your own clothes and choose your own outfit for the day, which sounds small and inconsequential, but what it does is it adds up to this feeling of I am somebody who can manage. And when you feel like you can manage, then when life throws you some curveballs and some difficulties, you say, well, I don't know. I've never been through this before, but one thing I know about me is I'm somebody who knows how to manage. And so that resiliency piece is a part of a mindset piece, so that when we're saying, well, I don't know, we're facing a pandemic. We've never had one before. But, the one thing I know about me is our family can stick together. We're pretty good at facing challenges together. And so those small little things that we do in childhood really do impact how we handle these stressors and how we ride through them in adolescence and into adulthood.
Very good. As always, we have some questions from our viewers.
Great.
I'm going to.
Thank you, viewers, for sending these in. Can I say it's appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's nice to have one consistency with the show because we aren't on the same couch. We aren't doing the show from the studio. So this is the consistency, having some questions from our viewers and being able to have you answer them. My son was a germaphobe before the COVID outbreak, so this has only made matters worse. He makes us wash and rewash our hands. He makes us wipe everything down. He won't give me hugs or hold my hand anymore. It's both infuriating and exhausting, but I also feel badly for him. You can tell he is really anxious about us getting sick and dying. So similar to that whole self-care, but this is maybe an extreme case for this family.
Yeah. So this little guy, has anxiety, and it's important for us, if we have a child with anxiety, that we need to get informed about how anxiety works so that we can parent around it appropriately. And I can give you some tips today, but I would recommend that you go to one of the great organizations I know, like anxietybc.org has really great information for parents, and there's others. Check out your provinces. I know we've got people tuning in from New Brunswick and Newfoundland, so see what you've got in your local jurisdictions as well. But get educated, and then help the child understand a little bit about what goes on with feeling anxious, because what we want to do is to be able to teach them some skill sets. You never get rid of anxiety. What you learn to do, and kind of hearkening back to how I opened, you learn to have a better emotional regulation around it. And so part of it as a parent is we can help calm our child by some of our actions, but also we really can't constantly be there to be the calming agent, that we have to teach our kids how they can calm their anxiety on their own. So one thing that I can tell you, and I just actually read a fantastic article about this on the weekend, and I posted it up on my Facebook page, but the Atlantic Monthly wrote an interesting article about the change in childhood these days. They focused a lot on anxiety because 20% of the population, it's our largest category for children's mental health disorders. And one of the things that they cite in there is that when you're working with a family to overcome these kinds of anxieties, is we have to train the parents to not make such accommodations. And what I mean by that is, yes, you want to help your son in the sense of soothing him. It's okay. We're not going to die. We're doing all the right things. But when they start saying, wash your hands again, wash your hands, and when you start fight that exhaustion part, that frustration is like, people shouldn't be made to do. You shouldn't have to rearrange your whole family life because one person has at this point, irrational. It's rational to know there's a germ out there. We need to be safe, but it's irrational if you're like, no, because we are wearing masks and we are social distancing and we haven't touched anything, and now you're just I'm satisfying your panicked thinking by washing my hands for the umpteenth time when I haven't been out of the house. So we've got to stop making those accommodations, but we want to do it in a loving way, because they really are. Their amygdalas are quite hijacked when they get panicky like that, and they kind of can't think straight. They can't do those same kind of tools. So we need to calm them and relax, but don't make the accommodation. Say, my hands are fine. I don't need to go wash them again. And again, when you portray this kind of calm Buddha presence, you're supporting common sense, which is we really don't need to if we're safe.
Right. So we're dealing with high emotions. We're dealing with anxiety. We're also dealing with schooling. School is which is causing me high anxiety. I didn't like grade 9 math the first time I did it. I'm not enjoying it now.
Listen, I have to say that I spoke to my local trustee, and I did a free webinar, to support parents. And one of the biggest messages that I want to get out to parents, because I don't know, it's so in our culture that our job as a parent is to educate our kids, and that if you're not doing your utmost to educate your kids, that you are somehow they're falling behind, or you're being negligent, or whatever. And I think, again, it's really important that when you talk to the school boards, that what they're saying is we want to make sure that families are doing okay. And outside of a lockdown, school plays a really important part for kids to actually get away from home and give parents a break, as well as educate them. But there's a lot more that schools do as well. That's where your social grouping are, and that's where you have another adult, your teacher, who actually cares about you and says, how was your weekend? And it's good for kids to have a lot of caregivers in their lives, not just their parents, and give them an education. Lo and behold. But given that public education is for the masses, they can't expect everyone to have technology. They can't expect every parent to understand the curriculum enough to deliver it. They can't. There's some parents that are still in necessary work occupations, and kids are home with older siblings. Every situation is different. So the school board knows this. They are totally sensitive to this. What they're saying is, if it is helpful, because there's some kids who actually miss their friends, miss their teachers, would like to have something else to do, want that feeling of normalcy, like that added structure to their days, like having these resources already vetted for them, then great. If it adds to your family's sanity, then there you go. But if it is actually creating fights the way, well, because you know what I think about homework, but if this is creating conflict, again, if making our highest value at this time, social cohesion, trumping, well, public health, social cohesion, education is lower on that list. If it is turning into a war, and this is something that is not helping your family, if you are at that break point where you're going to start to shred the relationship, it's fine. They will figure out a way to mark people. They will figure out a way for people to get caught up. So it's not to say that you can be lackadaisical. I think you should, give it a good go. But I'd also say to parents, learning happens all the time. And if you are someone who is creative, you just have to think about how to extend that learning. So, there's all kinds of kids, for example, that are like watching, cooking shows or whatever. And you're like, great, let's take that off the YouTube channel and into the kitchen, and let's do some cooking together. That's learning something. There's people learning TikTok dances. That is learning something. You get curious and you ask a question about something that you read, and then you say, oh, I don't know, let's go to Google Maps and find out where that is. So long as you stay curious, you really can't stop a brain from growing and learning. So yeah.
All right, I have a question relating to schooling. My twins are in grade 3 and in separate classes at school. Now that we are doing online learning together at home, they are comparing their work more. One struggles harder to learn, and I don't want them to get discouraged, but they don't do as well. But one doesn't do as well as his sister. Any suggestions? Should I separate them at homework time? So again, we're dealing with that conflict of schooling.
Yeah. Okay, but come on, you mother of twins. Mm-hmm. So, separate from the COVID thing, did you have a special strategy that you used for your kids around homework and school? Like, did they come rushing home with their report cards, nana, nana, boo, boo, I got this, I got that?
They never did that. And it wasn't because there was a difference. And we realized the difference in learning the day that we caught one helping the other and doing their homework in the back of the car for them. So that was kind of the indicator. And then we did start separating them so they were on their own in separate classes. So which I understand. Yeah,
I think that's super important regardless. If you have the luxury of having a school that has enough classrooms for that age cohort to let them have their own teacher, their own experience, even if the curriculum is a bit parallel, it's not apples to apples. It takes some of the pressure off.
But we certainly went through years where one would have an hour worth of schoolwork and the other one in a different class would have no homework. And so it really was a struggle. But it was just on an individual basis. It's, it doesn't matter what they're doing. Here's what you have to do. This is what you have to get through. Yeah. And if you have a problem with it, then maybe we should, you should explain that to your teacher. It's leave us out of it kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you can't do that right now unless you're, face-to-face on a Zoom conference with the teacher. So,
but I love that, because that really is this whether it's around, in this case, homework. But when you have twins, they're just more likely to be comparators because they're the same age. And of course, the closer the similarity, the more likely that you can compare them. And so, boy girl is different than boy girl girl, and fraternal versus identical, again, spread of difference. But in the end, what you see is that it's really a child's decision about how threatening they feel their sibling is. And you see with some twins, they're almost like one identity. I mean, that's being, I'm coarsely saying what some will feel like more like you're my ally. And in fact, what they'll do, and I know you had this with your kids, they'll sometimes gang up as a little team, and they'll like conquer the parents together. Right. I remember you saying what two can do together, what one can't do alone. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes there's an incredible tightness between the two, and they don't perceive the other one as being particularly threatening. And they'll create their own language, and they've got their own kind of fantasy life together, and that can go on for years and years and years. But for other kids, it can be quite threatening to have a sibling that is doing well in things that our society deems as having more merit. And, clearly our society sends the message that schooling is important. And clearly our society sends the message that boys should be, active in sports. And so if you're other than that stereotype, that cultural messaging that gets put across, it's easy to get discouraged, and it's easy to look at that other sibling and see how they're excelling in that area. So to your point, what we have to do is we have to actively try to send a better message than they're going to figure out, probably culturally, which is to say, you know what, we're all just like the wildflowers in the field, and some people are poppies, and some people are dandelions, and some people are roses, and some people are whatever. And just like all the other species, everyone is different, everyone is unique, and everyone has different attributes. And those attributes don't need to be stacked up like, we don't criticize polar bears because they don't fly. So we're all different, and we're not better than or less than. You can't say that a maple tree is better than a fir tree. We're all different. All of us are different, and we all have different learning styles. And to your point, for some people, it may well be that math comes really easy to them, or learning in general comes really easy to them. And for somebody else, being really physical comes easy to them. So it's not better or worse. It's just some of us have strengths, and others we have to put in the effort. And that effort part is where we want to shine our attention, which is, what, I know that whatever mark you'd like to get, you can get there, with persistence, with efforts. Maybe that's a tutor, maybe that's different learning. I don't want to say accommodations, because I don't mean that, but I mean support structures, however that will be.
Well, I will tell you, we did find an online math tutor. So, as the schooling and education is changing and kids are adapting, so too are tutors. And so this one has gone from, being at home to now doing everything online, and they're actually 2 hours away from us. So it really is an interesting time.
Yeah. And, for example, too, some kids actually are really enjoying being back in the classroom because they're doing the Google Hangouts and they're working collaboratively, and they like doing the work socially. And then other people are like, I'm much better and more focused when I work individually and things are quiet in the background. And actually the classroom is sort of chaotic for me. This really has made it so that I know exactly what to focus, and I can just get done what I have to do. So it's very interesting to just pay attention. Like, what do you need for you? Not what's best for everybody or best for your sibling, but what do you need for you?
Right. We have a couple minutes left, so I'm going to slip one more question in for you. We brought my parents to live with us when social distancing measures were put in place. I figured it would be easier to take care of them here with us. Unfortunately, they are very old school and critical of my parenting. They think I'm a softie and should put kids in line more. They yell at my kids, and they constantly step in and try to tell me how to parent. I'm losing my marbles. I thought that was, probably a lot of people are going through this right now with multi-generations and just trying to coexist together in one house.
Yeah. And so again, it speaks to the artificial situation where I am guessing that these parents, grandparents were probably like this before COVID-19. It's just, maybe they only saw them once a month, and now it's like day in, day out. So it's the volume of the interaction that's making it more difficult. So what I would say is, the old classic, know the variables that you can control and the ones that you can't. Chances are you're not going to change your parents' opinion of your parenting. So then it's a matter of how can you both best emotionally manage yourself. Can you find it within yourself to see, in a sense, almost the humor of their old ways, or some compassion to knowing that, you know what, if I was raised in their families of origin and heard their childhood stories, I would probably think the same way. And so to try to lighten up about it, because just because somebody criticizes you, you don't need to accept the criticism. You know, I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt. Nobody can humiliate me without my permission.
Right.
They can be critical. You don't have to feel criticized, if you know what I mean. You can just let that roll. And just, you know, the comforting piece here is that your kids will be fine. Your kids look to you to see if you love them, how you discipline them. And, you know, you can just let them say, grandma and grandpa, you know, they came from a different time. You know, they're a little bit, have a shorter wick. They're a little bit more impatient. And honestly, if kids, they know their grandparents, and if they don't want to get yelled at, they can also talk quieter, clean up more, to do what, you know, you can actually say, well, I know a sure way not to get yelled at. You can help make that situation better too. So I don't think we need to see kids as fragile. We can see kids as actually being part of building the solution in the home as well. So I do feel for you, but hopefully a little bit of that, finding your little ground center, and remembering that it's your job to raise them, and you're probably doing just fine. The kids will be okay, as I like to say, Jennifer.
That's right. That's right. How can people find out more information? Because I know you're still doing a ton of stuff online.
I am. Thank you. So I think the best place to send people is my website, which is AlysonSchafer.com, because on my main web page, that links to kind of everything else I'm doing. So I'm doing a daily Instagram tip of the day. I have free online webinars to help support work at home and homeschooling. So I've got blog posts there, and any of the upcoming offerings that I'm doing as paid parenting courses and things like that. My books are on there. So I think that's sort of the main place for people to find me. And if you've got teens, I've got a great teen Facebook group just for parents of teens, because they have different issues than potty training.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Always good to see you. Keep
yes. Thank you for all the information. I know I appreciate it. I know all of our viewers appreciate it too. And thank you to our viewers who are watching in Ontario, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland. We really appreciate you being here with us. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time on The Parenting Show.